Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Off the Hook with Ajay, episode 5. I got actor Elimu Nelson in the building. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming on. I'm really excited for this episode. I watched some of your movies.
Okay. All right.
One of them in particular, Love Don't Cost a Thing.
Yeah.
That one. Also, I was looking into your last projects, man. Let's get into it. So you're on The Resident.
Yep.
You're on Tommy.
Yep.
So give us a little bit of info on both of those projects right there.
Well, Tommy was Edie Falco had a procedural that it only ran for like a year. I actually thought I was really shocked when it got canceled, but because I thought I had like a chance of coming back to it. But I actually shot that in New York almost like 2 years ago, and that was like I've done like a lot of like guest star spots. I've done like one recurring on like House of Lies back in the day. Okay. I had a heavy recurring role on a pilot called Suspicion on NBC that later called No Way Back, but then the pilot didn't get picked up. So there's like that was one of the projects, Tommy, where it felt like I was like a series regular, even though it was like a really big guest star. And it was a lot of fun. Listen, like I'm from the East Coast, so
New Jersey, right?
I was born in Jersey. I grew up in Milton, Massachusetts, which is like 6 miles south of Boston, and then I graduated from Syracuse, and then I bounced around in the city for a while. I was in Manhattan. I was in Bronx, like in Mount Vernon, if you take the 2 and the 3 all the way to the end. Okay. That part of Mount Vernon. And then pretty much like every borough except for like Long Island. And then I've been out in LA probably like close to about like since like 1997.
Okay, so you've been out here for a while then.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now how was that transition from the East Coast to the West Coast, man? Was it different? Was it a culture shock?
I think that let me see here. Like the main thing was food, right? Because when you're from the East Coast, like little things, like now, if I have hot wings, I want them with ranch. When I first got out here, it was just blue cheese, right?
Okay.
Out here on the West Coast, right? There's a lot more Mexican people. On the East Coast, a lot more Puerto Rican people.
Correct.
So when there was like this influx of like Mexican food, I was like, all right, I guess. I really didn't have like sushi back on the East Coast. Sushi was a different thing out here. Like most of it was like food. And then there's like a very like, if you're on the East Coast, especially if you're in like New York or whatever, even like in Boston, there's like an energy of like, you step or you get stepped on sort of thing. And LA is like much more laid back. But part of that I think is because like if you're in New York, the energy literally pulsates up from the sidewalk because you're around people and you're walking around people all the time. In LA, it's all trapped in cars, right?
That's true.
So like stuff like that. Like I remember when I first got out here, I was like, all right, like I gotta get like a part-time job. So like I'm used to like hitting the pavement. So I'm out there when I used to live in like West Hollywood. It was like 7:30, 8 a.m. I'm on the streets like why are all these stores closed? Like what's going on here? Like why has nothing open and anything? So that was kind of more of like the culture shock. But then as I got acclimated to out here, like the other thing too is like it's basically summer all year round, right?
That's true.
Born in Jersey, grew up in Boston, graduated from Syracuse, New York City. I've seen snow, I've seen thunderstorms, I've been in hurricanes. I've had brick cold. So out here, like the vitamin D, like the first like 2 or 3 years out here, I used to tell people like, you should live in LA for at least 2 to 3 years of your life, especially if you're not in the industry. Because it's like one big vacation, right? Everybody's pretty, there's like nice cars, there's all this like fake stuff, but it's fun to be a part of, right? So for me to like understand like, oh, this is where I live. This is like my hood, and sort of understanding like the differences between like the cities and how the highways can work for you and all that other sort of stuff. That took me like a while because like I'm used to like community, like LA pockets of it. I've experienced community. And then also the industry that I'm in, to double back to like the resident, it hasn't always been that way.
Okay.
So like the resident, the most recent thing that I've been on, I went and shot that. I shot that in Atlanta, and I was out there for about like 2.5 weeks. It's a really big guest spot. The way that they left it off, everybody thinks that it's gonna be like a recurring role. I hope that it is. You know, we'll see what happens.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So it was a really good opportunity. But all that is to say, like in terms of like the differences between like the East Coast and the West Coast, like I can pretty much get down anywhere, sort of thing. But like I totally get why. Like I have friends that I went to school with at Syracuse that were from the West Coast.
Okay.
I get why they came back to the West Coast. I get it. Like in my opinion, right? From what I've experienced, like if you grow up on the West Coast, right, you got a certain hustler's mentality to you, but it ain't the hustler's mentality of the East Coast, right?
There is a difference.
Like, it can be like a little more like laid back.
Yeah.
People sort of like enjoy moments like a little differently out here, right? Whereas on the East Coast, it's just all the time. So, and especially when you don't have that vitamin D like you do like all year round on the West Coast.
Right.
If you come to the East Coast and like a lot of cats that come from the West Coast go right to New York, right?
Right.
Like that's like the biggest culture shock ever, because it's gonna get cold. People could be rude. It's gonna be fast. It's like, and it's not as sort of like city friendly like LA is. Like in LA, the gas might be expensive, but you can get in your whip. And you understand why people have like nice cars out here, because you're always in traffic, right? Right. You're kind of like taking your time. You can be in LA, you can go to the supermarket, you can stock your house up with food, right?
Right.
New York is like, it's a culture where you're ordering out all the time. Like you need money for every single moment of being in New York City every single day, right? So it's just different. It's just different. So it took me a while to kind of get used to all that.
You know what? Like for myself, I'm originally from Sacramento.
Okay.
North. So moving from Sacramento to, Southern California, that in itself was a culture shock for me. And now we're in the same state. It's just north and south. But the vibe is just so much different up north in the Bay Area than it is in LA. The best way for me to actually compare the Bay Area would be like New York swag, like East Coast swag. It is kind of like that in a way. It's cold over there. It's not as hot as LA. The hottest it'll get out there is maybe 85 to like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Especially over here where I'm at in Lancaster, California. I'm in the desert right now.
Oh yeah, I know you're at.
Yeah. So I'm about like 45 minutes from LA, right?
Yeah.
Right now I'm in my studio. It's 93 degrees already right now, and it's barely 11 o'clock, 11:15. I'm over here sweating. Like, dude, I hate the heat. So when it comes to going back to the Bay Area and LA, it was a culture shock, and it's kind of funny how little cities, little places have their different swag. And East Coast is the snow. It's the cold environment. Personally, me, I would rather live in that environment. I don't know. That's just me personally. I love the cold. I'd rather be cold because you can get warm fast. When you're hot, it's really tough. You got to have a pool or you got to have a really good AC.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Like
it's interesting, all those little things, So getting back to the resident, man. So when you got that gig with the resident, what was going through your mind, man? Give us the process on how you got that.
Okay. So coming into 2020 was crazy for everybody, obviously. With pandemic, depending on how you voted presidentially, the whole situation, right? So what happened with SAG was that because of COVID, the whole industry shut down, right? Okay. So how it works SAG after is like this. you have to make a certain amount of money to qualify for health insurance, right?
Right.
So if you don't have opportunities to audition to get jobs, then you're screwed, right? So what happened was half the year goes by, we're out of, business for maybe like 4 to 5 to 6 months. So then when things got up and going again, there's this whole, it's just like an influx of people like trying to like get like these little jobs, right?
Right.
So last year, I actually didn't qualify for the insurance because I had like a couple really close calls on like pretty big shows. But I basically didn't make any money acting last year because
Right.
I didn't have the opportunities that I usually have, right? And it's like,
Right,
like certain years you'll work a month, certain years you won't work a bunch.
Right.
Like, all right. One of the gigs towards the end of last year was this show called True Story, which is Kevin Hart's got a new show coming on Netflix.
Okay.
And so I was up for like one of the series regular gigs, right?
Okay.
And I was like this close to getting it. And when I didn't get it, I had like a complete breakdown, right? And so I was kind of venting all this stuff out to one of my really, really close friends. And he kind of put me on to like some truth about myself, right?
Okay.
So when he did, like he was like, listen, this is not like an indictment of your acting ability or anything like that. But I've kind of heard this story before. And he kind of ran down some truth about myself. And I just sit there and I had to listen to it, right? Kind of like any other actor. And I was like, okay. When I got all that venom out, it was kind of like I was like starting from anew with all this experience that I had. So then coming into the next year, what happened was early January, I had auditioned for it's like this comedy on CBS. And then midnight that night, it was like January 6th. Or no, it wasn't the 6th, because we know what happened on the 6th. It was like, it was a little bit later than that, so like 12th or 13th.
Okay.
And so I get an email from my manager at like midnight. And I'm like, what is this? Can I curse on your thing?
No, yeah. You're good.
Okay. All right.
You're good.
So I get this email and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Right. And I look at my phone and I'm like, and it's like, hey, do you know anything about this? And it's a message that says, we are pinning Elimu Nelson for the role of Detective Samuels from like this date to this date.
Right.
And I'm like, it's midnight. My kid's sleeping. I'm like, I have no fucking idea what this is. But great. If it happens, awesome. If it doesn't, whatever.
Right. Okay.
So then I get up the next day and I'm like, oh, this is Kevin Hart's show. So they have, I didn't get the one part, right? Oh, but they're gonna see me for something else. Like when you're pinned for something, it's basically like down to like you and one other person, or it might just be you, but they have to run it up the ladder to see if network, and studio agrees and all the rest of that stuff.
Right.
So I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like that happened pretty cool. So I'm like, all right, great. So you kind of have that like in your back pocket. Then I just finished auditioning for this comedy for CBS. The very next night, my manager hits me again at like midnight. And I'm like, what? Like, what is it? Right? She's like, oh, you're pinned again for this other show. And I was like, oh shit. So like within 2 days, within like 3 or 4 days, I was pinned for like 2 shows. And I was like, oh, this is great. Didn't work at all last year. Maybe it's coming in this year. Right.
Right. Now you're gonna be overbooked.
Right. So I'm like, this is the dream.
Right.
So 3 days later, I get released from the pin for the comedy show. I'm like, all right, cool, like no problem. And then I get this slew of auditions. And this is literally kind of like what it's really like to be an actor. I had, because now in this day and age, you're not going in and doing like pre-reads and seeing people and stuff. Mm-hmm. You are doing tapes. I happen to like doing tapes. Even before when it was like, oh, we don't know if we want to see maybe put himself on tape. I love doing tapes. I'm very good at doing tapes.
Okay.
So I had in one weekend, I had like 5 auditions, like on like a Monday, right? And so like it was one of those things where I was like, all right, this is the moment and this is what's coming at me. take full advantage of it. Don't cheat it. I'm at a good point in my craft. Like, I'm gonna nail these. So I sat over my boy's house that I do the taping with, and I was there for like 3.5, like 4 hours. Knocking them back, like all in excellence, right?
Oh wow.
Send these things off. You know, my agents in the past have been like, listen, like you make really, really good tapes. It's like it's a matter of time sort of thing, right? These are all like series regulars, heavy recurs, a lot of dialogue, a lot of pages, and you know, in order to study and get it done and all the rest of the stuff, it's like it takes a lot out of it.
Right.
I nail all these on like a Monday, and then the audition for the resident comes in on that Monday night. It's due like on Wednesday.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay. I'm sitting out in my car before I go into my boy's house, and I'm sort of like looking at the material and getting myself like emotionally prepared, right? And I go in, and I'm like, all right, so here we go. And he just kind of sits there and he's watching me. And I don't know if you've seen the episode or not, but like in like the last scene of the show, like I'm like crying and stuff.
Okay.
So I start doing the audition, and he's like, whoa. I'm like, okay, let me do another one, right? And then I'll just completely lose it, and that's that. And I say to him, I go, he goes, dude, like they have to give you this job. In my career, I have been the best actor numerous times. I've been told I've had the job. I like more times than I can even mention, but I haven't gotten the gigs, right?
And why do they do that?
Because people in positions, like it's like this. If you and I are having a moment and you really, really believing what you're saying inside that moment, who's to tell you that you're wrong?
That's true.